Jag är en bulldog. Ta lite högre upp. Ja. Så. Nej, det ser väldigt dött ut. Ringa Leitert.
Ja, pröva med honom får vi se om han är tillgänglig. Om jag har hans adress.
Ja, eller
Brukar alltid vara.
jag har något telefonnummer till honom, vet jag. Nej, det hade jag inte. Ja, det är väl där han borde svara, känner jag.
Hejsan. Har du tid? Vi har problem med delad 36. Ja, precis så långt funkar det. Och micken verkar funka.
Hallå, hallå?
Nej, precis. Och jag har startat om den och den lyser upp, men den funkar inte ändå. Okej. Okej. Men den lyser rött. Jag trycker på startknappen. Men det kommer inte ut något. Ingenting. Någon gång. En. 5 minuter. Jag tycker snart så.
Ja.
Kom kameran upp för den. Ja. Okej. Ja, jo, precis. Men det är synd att inte det funkar med screen. Varför gör det så? Okej. Ja. Men det här läget får du köra på. Du får inte byta läget för du kör på detta.
Ja, jag ställer mig där och sen så blir det bra. Där. Så. Ja, nej. Det har jag lagt ner. Men det är väldigt mycket flint. Går inte det att lösa?
Okej, men det är bara på skärmen här, inte på streamen. Eller? Det går ut också.
Mm. Men de får ut slidesen ändå.
Jaha, men det är ju den fasta datorn här. Jag tror inte han kommer åt handla på den.
Nej.
Nej. Mm. Ja, bra. Tack så du ha. Hej.
Ja, tack för hjälpen.
Du är igång.
Ja, då kör jag. Så, där någonstans. Hello. Det ska jag göra. Hello there. Hi everyone. Welcome. Due to some technical difficulties, we are a few minutes late. But since I only got 96 slides, we should be done well in time anyway. However, the 96 slides over there isn't really that difficult to get through, because there are masses of source code listings and very nice color images that I'm going to show you. So hopefully everything will work out. And if we can't make it all the way, you get the slides, and hopefully it will not be that much of a problem. So the idea is to continue to look at JavaFX and see all the other stuff that JavaFX has to offer us. Last time we looked at the basics of how JavaFX works, what we do in order to get things up on the window, how to interact slightly at least between buttons and some text. Today we're going to look through a lot more of the controls and see how they work, and there are a number of different controls available, and most of them, when you've looked at, for example, the list controls, all of them work more or less the same, and when you looked at all the different ways of doing stuff, you will see similarities, because of course this has been created in order to be easy to use. After that, we are going to look at mouse and keyboard slightly, and look at how to handle events and the mouse and the keyboard and so on. We'll go through that rather fast, but we will show you how to get access to the mouse pointer's position, or what keys are pressed and so on. And lastly, animations. Because one of the things that they really looked into and added into JavaFX compared to previous iterations of graphical user interfaces in Java is just that. To be able to create animations and really anything that moves on the screen in a good way, in a fast way where everything works as expected. So the idea is, and what they've had as a limit for almost everything, is that you should be able to, or you must be able to get 60 frames per second in your animations. And it's possible to get over that as well, but they've set this 60 frames per second as a minimum. And you can of course get below that if you really try as well, but that's what they aimed for in the framework. And then we'll wrap things up, and unfortunately, even after these 96 slides, there's still tons of more stuff in JavaFX that you might want to learn and that you could look at and so on. But we'll try to get through all of this. Controls, as previously stated, controls or components or widgets or whatever you want to call them, works like putting them somewhere on the window, and most of these controls are interactive, so we can listen to or react to some sort of event emitted from them, and we'll look at the event handling later on. And we looked at a set of simple controls in the last lecture. What we're going to do today is to look at a number more of these controls. However, there are so many controls for so many different things that we cannot possibly cover all of them. So it's still just a subset of all the controls that are available in JavaFX. But as I said previously, once you get to know them, you will see that they work more or less in the same way, and when they work more or less the same way, it's easy, fairly easy at least, to use another control and so on. Yeah. The first one that we're going to look at is the combo box, or as it's also known as the drop-down box. So the idea is that we have a number of items that we want to select from, 7 plus minus 3 elements, and we click on something similar to a button or a list or something like that. Click it and it will drop down like a menu for us and we can select. If there's not enough room, then we will get a scroll bar, and it's also possible to add it, select more than one, and so on. So you can do a lot of things with this one. Before JavaFX 2.1, there was a similar control called choice box, which wasn't as advanced as this combo box. You shouldn't use the choice box, but it's there, and you will see a number of examples of it if you search the internet. So just remember that the combo box is a better choice box. All right. This is what we're going to create. First off, we are going to see this button or list over here. So we press that one, and we will get a list of a little bit more than 10 elements of really great Pink Floyd studio albums. And when we select one, we will show the image, the cover photo of that specific album. And I've tried a few here. And this is just one of the many logotypes or images for Pink Floyd. A really nice P over there. That symbol is also tattooed somewhere on my body, but I will not show it. So the source code, we create a combo box. We call this one Pink Floyd. And it's a generic control, so we say that we want to put strings in it. We add the different strings by using pinkfloyd.getItems.addAll, which is fairly similar to what we've done previously in other examples as well. And then we just add all the different albums as strings, and we separate them with a little comma. We have the start of the layout, which is just a simple V box over there, and then we add an image to that, and we put a little reflection on it. But then the layout is merely to add Pink Floyd, which was the combo box, and the image box, which was the image over here. Notice also that this is another way to say that we want to load an image by appending, or prepending rather, file, colon, and then the path of the image. So there are different ways of doing this, and you'll see a few of them. And this is the first part, the setup part. If we run this with a few more lines, we will get the user interface. But the idea is that we want, of course, to be able to select a value. And we select a value by implementing the set on action. And over here I've said action event E. I could say just E if I like. You've seen numerous examples of this before. The idea is that we implement the single method that's available in this action handler, that interface that we are implementing. And what we do is that we check Pink Floyd get value. If that one equals the pipe at the gates of dawn, we set the image to this image, piper.jpg, and it goes through all the different albums in exactly the same way. So it checks if the value, and that's the value of the selected one in the combo box, equals, for example, the Endless River, use this image. And we add this to the scene, and we push everything through the primary stage, and the application that you saw before, where we could select different albums from the drop-down list, or the combo box, works. So not more code than this is needed. Set on action, implement that, check the value, and do something. There are, of course, methods available, so you can check the index or something else instead if you want that. But in this case, I checked the value. Continuing on these list controls, because the combo box is a list control, and there are a number of these list controls. And the next one we're going to look at is this list view, which is a better control to use if you have many items that you want to show. So if you have more than these, say, approximately 10 items that you want to show, the list view is a better choice. And the idea with the list view is that you get you define a part of the screen where you have a list, and it will have a scroll bar if not all elements are visible at once. And you can select, you can make multiple selections, you can edit these as well if you want. What differs slightly from the previous one is that instead of using the set on action, because in this case we might want a action to happen at the same time as we make the selection. So instead of having this set on action, we attach a listener to a selection model or a focus model. And this selection or focus models have in turn different methods. For example, get selected index or get selected item. And we do something depending on if we select this or that item. And I'll show you the example. Okay, so the idea in this one, and you'll see this one later, is that we are going to be able to select from a list of different Jedi Masters. Yeah, so I always have real data in my examples. So just as previously, we create a list view, which is a generic one, and we set a height for this one, 150 pixels, and then we add items to this one. So Yoda, Mace Windu, Plo Koon, all the way down. Add a nice little image, starter image, and then on the next slide we are going to add in an array list a number of different images like this. So it's just an array list containing what image we are going to show when we select a specific Jedi Master. And we add all this to the layout, and then the important part is this one, to add a listener to a specific selection. So what we do is we take our list view, Jedi list, get the selection model, and then the selected index property, and we add a listener. This will become clearer later on, but the idea here is that whenever we change the index, whenever we press something else, we have a listener appended onto that, listening to this change. And whatever change is happening is we get the thing that we are going to listen to over there. And when we listen to it and something changes, we say that show Jedi, which is the image, should set the image with the same number as the index of the selected Jedi. So we get this, if we press number 3, for example, it will go 0, 1, 2, 3, and it will load the Kiamundi image for us and set that to the image. So this many Jedi here is just the array list, and then we have the index of the selected Jedi. And when we run that, it looks something like this. And Cesatine is one of my favorites. It's just a small part, but he's really great. And he too looks something like me on a Monday morning. The idea here is that we have a number of, this is the list box, so we just select one of the items over here, and the image over here will change to the corresponding image. continuing on the theme of different lists, we have the accordion. And the accordion is something that was popularized by email clients, because we usually tend to have different things that we want to do in an email client. For example, we have the mails themselves, and then we have a button for calendar, to do, or whatever it might be. And whenever we press one of these buttons, it expands and shows some sort of content for that selection. And that's what the accordion does. But the class accordion doesn't work alone, so it uses something called a tiled pane, which is the content itself for this well, dragged out accordion. Using them together, and we will show some Jedi Masters again. We have, for each Jedi Master that we want to show, we create a tiled pane, T-pane in this case, so we will show Cesatine. We set the text to that, and then we put an image, same image as before, and a height and preserve ratio, so it will not change the size for it. And for this content pane we have here, we set the content to this image. So the content of the tile pane will be an image and nothing else in this case. We do the same for Mace Windu and blah, 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 several others. And then we have the accordion. And in Swedish, accordion is dragspel. So that's the Swedish word for today, dragspel. And that's one you're not going to use that much, I hope. But what the accordion does is that it adds all the different tile panes, and it's in this case sets the expanded pane to the first one, and that's it. In this case we add it to a root layout, and then we just show it. And that means that we get something that looks like this. So again, just this is when it starts up, it shows Cesatine like this. But if we go down here and we press Shakti, and then Shakti shows up instead. And it works for all the others as well. And that's a fairly nice way of showing information in a condensed space and be able to move around. And as you saw in the example, what we did here is that we call the set content. In this case, it's just an image, but it could be anything. It could be another layout with loads of buttons and labels and whatnot. So yeah, the content needn't be just one image. It could be anything. And if we look at, for example, a mail client, what's usually showing up in a mail client is some sort of tree view of the different, for example, mail accounts that you have. You have one for student, you have one for normal Gmail, you have one for this and that and this and that and so on. And usually we show this as some sort of tree structure, and of course in JavaFX there is a control for us to use in order to show things in a tree structure. It's called tree view. It works, well, fairly similar to the previous ones, or at least the accordion. The accordion used two classes, the accordion and the tile pane. And the tree view uses the tree view, which holds the tree itself, and also tree item, which are the different items in the tree. And as it is a tree, we can have subtrees and so on. In this case, we also add a listener to the selected element, as you'll see. The source code, we have a VBox just setting up the layout, and then we have a number of tree items. This one is going to be the root of it all. So we call that one Star Wars root. It is of type tree item, and it's generic using strings in this case. We add name, but we also add an image actually to this one. This will be our top root, so to say, and then we are going to create multiple subtrees. In this case, menace root, attack root for the different movies in Star Wars. So, and they all work exactly the same. So tree item, in this case, menace root, a little picture, and then for this menace root, get your an add and then a number of tree items, which are the different items in the subtree below this menace root. And we do the same for Attack of the Clones, Revenge of the Sith, and so on, until we get to the end where we take the Star Wars root and we add all the different movie roots to that one. So menace root, attack root, and so on. Then we built our tree, but we haven't shown it yet. So this large number of tree items are just connected, but in order to see them, we need to create a tree view. And this tree view just takes the Star Wars root, like here, for the constructor. And then we've set up the view of it, and we can create a nice, we can define the area where it should be positioned and all the things that we usually can do. But apart from that, we also want a little piece of text to show when we press a specific tree item. And we do that by, again, adding a listener. So the selection model, the index property list, add a listener, and then we just print out the value, so the text value in a label over there. Over here you see that we have a number of parameters. Usually we just say E and then the little arrow. However, what that says is really that, as we saw previously, this little E is just the event that we are managing for that listener. If you look up the add listener for the tree view, you will see that it does have 3 different parameters. It has one interface with one specific method that needs to be implemented, and this specific method in that interface takes 3 parameters. And by making a lambda statement of it, we just say that the different parameters are going to be called OV, old val, new val. What they mean is in this case that we listen to some specific object, but we also have the old value, the value that was previously selected, and the new value, the value that is now selected. However, in this case, we do not implement that, but we need to say that they are available. It looks something like this. I didn't have time to add the Last Jedi, but otherwise you see it's fairly complete. And if you go into Rogue One, for example, you can press Awesome Krennic, and it will say Awesome Krennic down here. Really nice icons, I would say. It took a while, so just look at it while I take a sip of water. Or is it water? Okay, enough with the lists. So they work more or less the same, and I've tried to add a little bit of the different things that they can do in each example, so the listeners, for example. But there are loads of other things available as well. So progress indicators are these little animations that are shown when some sort of progress is being made. For example, during downloading, copying, making calculations, whatever it might be. And there are 2 ways of doing this, just as a bar or as a little indicator as a pie chart. So we are 2 ways of doing it. and they take a value from 0 to 1 for the amount that has been done so far. And we set the progress using the method setProgress, which should be with 2s and not just 1. Okay, we are taking a little step away from Star Wars right now, or Pink Floyd, and we have dwarves instead. So, in this case, we are going to have a list view again, and we are going to be able to select multiple items in this one. And the idea is that we will have these 7 dwarfs, and the progress bar and the progress indicator is going to tell us in percentage, so to say, how many of them we have selected so far. So we set the selection model to multiple for the list view, and we add the different dwarfs, and we create a progress bar, and we create a progress indicator, and then in the get selection model selected in add listener, so the listener for this one, what we do is that we get the number of selected items, and as long as we are below or equal to 7, we calculate the progress, set progress to number of items divided by 7, and that calculates how large percentage of the number of them we've actually selected. And then we add everything up. Hello, dwarves. Yeah. So something like this. If we select 3 of them, I think, over here. Yeah, that's all of them. So 3 of them, we see that corresponds to 43%. This is a pie chart, and this is a progress bar. And I don't need to do anything more to get all of this. And I can, of course, go in and say that I don't want this to be shown the percentage or whatever I would like to do, but just as a simple example. And over here we see that this one is done, and this one is also done. It's called utförd in Swedish. So, okay, dragspel and utförd. Good words to know. And that's one we have selected all of them. Quite nice, I'd say. I like it a lot. A fairly late addition to JavaFX is the dialog box and the alert boxes that we might need. This is something that we really should use a lot with these little pop-ups, you know, in applications that gives us some sort of information on what's happening. They appeared in update 40 of JavaFX 8, so they weren't really included in Java 8, the first release. However, the good thing that's come of this is that they do rely upon more of the things that are available in Java 8 than perhaps many of the other controls available. So for example, when we get to especially the dialogues, but also some of the alerts, we use this optional type, which is a way to safely refer to something. So it could be a reference to something, or it could be not. So instead of checking for null, we know that either it is present there, either we can check for is present, so that there is a value checked, or well, there is a value, or there isn't. So we know that something is present, then we can do some actions based on that. Okay, simple example of an alert. The alert boxes being the simpler form of dialogues. So instead of having masses of information, they are just really simple, most of the cases pre-made alerts. So this is what we are going to get important information, your actions will have consequences, you will now destroy the Earth, and an OK button. And here I retract my statement that all my examples have real data, because I've tried this program and the Earth is still here. So the setup thing here is simple, because I only have a window and it has a button, and when I press the button this alert will pop up. So what happens is that in this set on action I create an alert and I tell it that I want it to be of the information kind, and that's why we get an I over there for information. Can you change the icon to something else? Well, of course you can. But in this simple example, I just show you straight off basic usage. We have a title, which is over there, important information. A header text, which is the information that you will get over there. And a content text over there. And the idea is that you give a short you call the exam the thing that you want to inform the user shortly. Just tell them what it is over there, and in the content you give further explanation of the problem, what we should do and what options we have and so on. In this case I just do a show and wait over here, which means that it will take up the screen and it will wait for the user to make an input. So it will halt any other kind of input to the underlying window. It's possible to just make a show and then you can use both windows at the same time. But in this case we really want the user to know that if we press OK, the Earth will be destroyed. And just showing a few others, we have warning and error. So these images are the default ones. So in this case, I hope you know what you're doing as a head text. The next step could possibly destroy the Earth, which is a content text. And over here, I don't know whoever is going to be able to see this, but now you did it and cannot continue because there is no Earth left. Great. Well, not so great, but it shows that it's fairly simple to do this kind of stuff. But sometimes you want more than just being able to get a OK. So you want options. And in this first example, I will only show that we can check if the OK or the cancel or close button has been pressed. And we do that by using the option type. And we'll see later on when we construct a dialogue later on instead. We'll show that more obviously. There are some predefined buttons like button OK, but we can have custom buttons as well. The good thing is that we can use the OK button, we can have some other text on it if we like, but we know that it is the OK button, so that's the button that's going to be executed when we press the Enter key, for example. And we'll see, just show one way of handling the input from the user, because there are other ways of doing this. Okay, so we create an alert again, this time of confirmation. So we have OK and arborete, which is cancel. It says arborete because JavaFX obviously checks the language of the operating system, and it calls for the text strings that are most often used, or rather should be used in an arborete button. So instead of cancel, it fires up arborete. Okay, confirmation. Set title to please confirm, header text and content text as before. You're going to destroy the Earth. Are you sure you'd like to proceed? Then comes the cool part. Optional here are button type, meaning that it will listen for the specific buttons that are used, is the result of the alert show and wait. So when we put this alert show and wait, it will run, and then when we press one of the two buttons, it will return back to the main window, where it will check if the button type was OK, which is this one. It will then say you press the OK button. And if you destroy the Earth, I mean, perhaps you don't just want to know that you press the OK button, but otherwise the response text will be you press the cancel or escape key. In this case, we press the cancel or the escape key, and it's possible to press over there or press over there, whichever one we like. So that's one way to check, and we can of course check the button type for a number of different values, not just OK, also cancel and so on, and create our own buttons, and we'll look more into that later on. Something that popped up in JavaFX that we weren't really expecting was charts. So there's inbuilt support in JavaFX for a large number of different charts. And we think that that's probably because a lot of business people like to use Java in order to look at business stuff. And business people like to see things in business diagrams. I don't know, but I think that's the way. And there are 6 different kinds of charts available, from pie charts to bar charts, and they work basically the same. I didn't have time to update this, but this is what we're going for. Programming languages in January, and this is unfortunately 2017 and not 18. But I can still say that Java is by far the most popular on the TIOB programming index, which is nice because that's what we are teaching here. Objective-C is almost out of the charts by now. Yay! C is the second largest language, which is, well, it's C. C++, really cool language. I like it a lot. C#, okay-ish. Python, well, it's Python. So the idea is that we want to make these different bars over here, and we want some sort of scale on this side, and we want the different things over here, and a little legend over there, and all of this. And this is, as you'll see, fairly simple actually to do. There's a large number of different classes that we need to use. However, when we do use them, they unfold in a rather nice way. So we have category and number axis classes, which we call X and Y axis in this case. And we are going to create a bar chart of strings and numbers. And numbers is a subclass of all the different numerical classes in Java. So from big integer down to float with a capital F and so on. So any kind of number. And we use this as a bar chart with x-axis and y-axis. And we set a little title and a little labels on the x and y axis. As this is going to be an xy chart, because we're going to have x and y values, we create a new series of strings and numbers. We call this value 17. And then we add data. So value 17, get data, add new xy chart data, blah, 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 like this. And then the numbers, or the name and the number, like this. And we do this for 16, and we've done it for 15. And that's really all that there is to it, because then we just add everything to the proglang bar chart, the bar chart, and then we add the bar chart to the layout, and everything shows up just as you saw previously. Of course, there's a lot of things that we can set, like the colors, the X and Y order. We can set the legend, where the legend should be, and loads of more. But you can check that up and have a look at how it really works. But you get a lot for free by doing charts in JavaFX. Moving on, something that's really common in most applications today is some sort of menu structure. And depending on the operating system, we have the menus either in the top of the application or the top of the screen somewhere. So the menu basically is a number of items that we can select. We can select them, and there's a drop-down menu. It could be a potential drop-down menu under that one as well. And in JavaFX, we do this by using 3 different classes. We create the menu bar itself, which holds all the things that we can do with menu bar, the different options with menu, and then we have menu item, which are the things that really drop down. And we can have these inside of each other to be able to get sub-menus. And we also have radio button item and check menu item, making it possible for us to make menu items with little radio buttons or check marks and so on as well. And it's easier to see in an example. However, we can also add images, of course. We can have shortcuts, which we'll look at shortly. In order to separate different parts in a menu, we have this separated menu item, which just makes a little bar to separate. And then we have this set on action. And that's really what we do for each of these different items. So we create a set on action and tell it what it should do. The good thing about this is that this set on action, we don't need to implement it just there. It could be a method call to somewhere else, meaning that for this set on action, we can have a call for a method over there, but we can also have, for example, a toolbar with different buttons on them, which also call the same method somewhere else. So it makes it fairly easy for us to reuse the methods for different controls. We also have an auxiliary method for reading from disk, and I will begin by just showing this auxiliary method. And what it does is it just takes a string, which is the name of a file that we want to read, and what it does then is to create a string builder, and it reads all the things from this text file, in a try-catch block, and it's if something goes wrong, it shows a little alert saying that you did it wrong. Otherwise, it sends it back. So it just reads text from a text file, because I didn't want to type it all. And this time it's characters from the Skylanders franchise game-ish, something cute stuff. So it will show little text about some character from the Skylander franchise, and it will show an image, and it will show the main character Spyro when we first load up the application. However, the topic for this example was the menu. So we create a menu bar, which is just a menu bar. We populate it with a number of different menus, one for file, water, technology, and then effects. And we add all of these to the menu bar, And then we look at the different menu items. For example, we want a menu item called exit, which should have a little image, which is an exit image, and that action should just exit like this. However, we also want a shortcut for it, so we set an accelerator, a key combination, Control plus X. And after that, we add a number of different characters. So in this case, we create a menu item for thumb back, and it has an action which sets the image to something, and it reads the text file called thumbback.txt. And we do that for all the different characters, not that many, but a few of them. So we check what image we should load, and then we read from a text. For the effects menu, we enter a toggle group where we have a radio menu item for either no effects, called none, or for reflection down here. So either we add this to the toggle group, and over here that to the toggle group. So we can have either we add a reflection, or we press none and the reflection of the image will disappear. And we do the same with drop. We have the drop effect as well as these effects. So either no effect, reflection, or drop effect. Okay. So when that's done, we add the different menu items to the different menus that we have. So for the if we take menu water, for example, get items, add all, thumbback, chill, jill, and slam, like that. And for the effects, no effect, ref effects, drop effects. And that's actually all we need to do, because we've set all up all the actions and so on. So we just add everything to the root, and it looks something like this. We can, if we press the file, we will see exit with Control plus X and the little image. And if we choose, this is thumb back, also quite like me Monday morning. And we can go to the effects menu, and we see that reflection is activated, and we see that there is a slight reflection down here for this image. And we can change that to none, or we can change it to a drop shadow, and it will change accordingly. And this one, I think, has no effect whatsoever when we start the application. All right. How about taking a 10-minute break? Yes, we try that. And we're live again. Welcome back after this much deserved break. Just a few more slides left. We've managed to look at quite a few of the different controls, and another nice control for structuring a window where we want to have much information is to use tabs. So tabs basically mean that we have different content areas for different basically buttons, but it looks like tabs, and we have something like that. And we have, of course, support for this in JavaFX with tab pane, which constructs different panes, and then tab objects, which is the content of the different tabs. And since that is fairly quick and easy to do, we will show this by using another component called the web view and the web engine, which makes it possible for us to load specific web pages and show them using a web engine based on WebKit. And we use the method load in order to do that. And I'll show you exactly how to do this. And this web engine is fairly competent. You will not have access to any plugins and stuff like that, but it can do quite a lot anyway. So the only thing we're going to do is to create 3 different tabs with 3 different web pages. And we will show them at least one of them, and then the other works exactly the same, but with other URLs. We create tab pane, which is the place for the different tabs. And we create a first tab called just official, which isn't closable, so set closable to false. Tab Swedish, which goes to, in this case, the tab name will be starwars.se, which is closable. And then we have the force, which has the name theforce.net, like this. And we add all of these to the tabs. And that's all that we need to do in order to have a tabbed interface. To this, we add for the different panes a web view. And the web view will have a web engine, which we get from this get engine. So we have a web view, browser official, and the web engine from this browser official. And then we say show official, which is a web engine, load this specific URL. And then we set the content of official, which is our tab, to browser official. And we do the same for the 2 other panes, tabs as well. And then we just put it on the screen. And we get something like this. So in this case, we have nothing but the tabs. So the first one goes to the official Star Wars homepage. And this was done during Halloween. So they had a Halloween theme. If you press this one, starwars.se, you will get to that web page. And if you push theforce.net, it will go to this one. And this is a nice way of using the tabs, of course. And in this case, I've only used tabs, but you can, of course, have text and buttons and all other stuff around this if you like. And we've also shown that it's possible to load a web page fairly easy, and going from here to create a small but fairly functional web browser isn't that difficult. So quite nice, I'd say, quite nice. As I said with animations, one of the things that they've done in JavaFX is to really push for multimedia animation, graphical stuff, so that it should be fairly easy to make a modern application. And just by, as in the previous example, just by showing web pages in a fairly simple manner is something that they wanted to add, so that stuff that's natural for us in applications today should be natural to make in JavaFX. And the same goes for multimedia, where the the application will make use of either DirectX or OpenGL, depending on platform, in order to play movies or play audio or whatever it might be in the best possible way, with as little strain to the computer as possible. So it makes use of the computer as efficiently as possible. And it has today support for many different kinds of audio and many different kinds of video. So the stuff that you probably already use. And we'll just have a look at simple playing MP3 and simple playing of a video. And we do this as simple as possible. In this case, we create a little image first with yeah, you'll see. However, media is the key class here, because media points to some sort of media, and then we have different player classes depending on if it is video or whatever it might be. So what this one does is it loads this MP3 file. So that was actually the MP3 file, and over here we show a nice image, and we set up some nice layout, and also a few buttons, and we'll show the content in these buttons in this slide, where we have a play pause, which has a set on action, which checks the music player, so it gets the status, and if the status is paused or stopped or ready, it will play. Otherwise, it will pause the music. We have a button called solo, which goes directly to the great solo in this song. If you have an MP3, because I can't play it here, but if you have an MP3 of the 1979-80 live recording of Comfortably Numb by Pink Floyd, of course, then if you go to this position in it, that's the start of the really intense solo. And since the solo is so good, we create a button which has on its action just to seek, that is, go to the position of the solo. So when you've listened to the solo and you think, oh my God, this was good, you can just push that one again and it will repeat itself. You can listen again and again and again to the solo. And we add all of this, of course, to the image. It would have been better with sound, but press over there. So, hello, hello. I will spare you the rest. And the solo, or something like that, but a lot better. Yeah, moving on, playing a video, and we see that we have something similar. We have a media player, a media, which is the path of, in this case, the Last Jedi trailer, because I have no copyrighted material whatsoever on my computer. Yeah. Okay, the media points to that file, and the media player again plays this one, and the media viewer shows the video itself. We set to autoplay true, and then we push everything up. Again, we can, if we like, use the same seek, for example, to get to a specific position and so on in this one. But in this case, I just add the video running. We can add little buttons for stopping and playing and so on. But the important thing here is to notice that it is really, really simple to put some video or play some audio in JavaFX. Previous years, before we added JavaFX to this Java course, we had an assignment where you use a third-party library to play MP3s, and that was a lot of work to do that. And now you do it with just a few lines of code in standard Java. So that's quite an improvement. Yay, moving on to the next subject, the mouse and the keyboard. Keyboard, mouse, great, done. Let's move on to animation. No. So the important thing here is that we are creating graphical user interfaces that interacts with us, that that listens to and make some sort of action depending on what we do. And we've seen this set on action and a few others previously. The important thing here is that when we have something like that, we have an event source, which in this case is a button. And then we have the action event, which is fired, handled by an event handler, which is easier to see if you look at this old style pre-Java 8 way of doing it. Because when we use something like set on action, what's really happening is that we are creating a new event handler with an action event, which is actually an interface. And that means that this interface needs to be implemented, and it has only one method, namely this handle, which takes this action event as an input. And then we do something, in this case, just print out that we pressed a button, for example. With Java 8, we are able to, with these interfaces, which has just one method to implement, we can remove a lot of this code and just say E, and then the little arrow, and then the content. But what that really means is that we have a event source over here, the button, which fires some sort of event which we need to handle like this. So that's what it really does. And this event handler needs to be registered with a button, which we saw in this set on event. But we can also use listeners, as we've seen in the list views. And then we use this add listener to something. And that was a way that, in principle, everything worked in Swing. So the idea is older than JavaFX. Just to attach a listener to a specific event source. And it's possible to listen to many different event sources and so on, and work by looking at what the mouse is doing or what the keyboard is doing and so on. And this is just an extract of what's possible and we've seen this user action, click a button. The object source is a button. The event type fired, event action, and the registration method. So in this case, we have set on action. And then we are going to look further into some of the others, mouse and key press, for example, and we see that they have their appropriate registration methods and different types over here. This example will have a mouse pointer which is somewhere in space, probably, because I can't find it. However, we are supposed to, these are 5 different Star Wars planets, and we can hover our mouse over one of them. Now we see it over here, and it will say this planet is called Alderaan. Oh, sorry. Or we can press it, and this dialog will pop up with some information about Alderaan. Got it. And we will do this by listening to the mouse. first off, just setting up the window, setting a lot of fields, reading a lot of images and put them at X and Y positions like this. That's not the fun part, but we need to do it. And then we create a dialogue. And in this case, we see that we create a real dialogue and not just a alert. So this dialogue is a type string. It's called dialogue. We set a title about the planet. We have a button type, OK button, which will have the name, got it, and be of kind OK done. And then we add that button. And we can add several more. We could have one for more info, for example, or cancel, or whatever. And we have a little label in here that we are going to use for displaying the text, called info. And then, if we want to check hovering over a planet, in this case Alderaan, we just use this set on mouse entered, which was for reading the mouse. This planet is called Alderaan. It's printed in the middle of the screen. And if we exit, we will replace that text with the original text again. And then we have in this Alderaan set on mouse clicked, E instead. And then we create the rest of this dialog box that we created over here. So we set a header, some text, set the content to this info, and then show and wait, because the info set text over here. We show that over there, and then show and wait. And that's what we need to do in order to feel where we are. Of course, there's a lot more we can do. All of these E's over here have X and Y positions as well, so we can see exactly which X and Y coordinate we have for the mouse pointer as well. But we'll check on that later. Reading the keyboard events is basically the same. However, instead of X and Y and so on, we have a get code, which checks for what kind of key code the press is. And we have a number of them, like home, tab, up, A is the capital A, and so on. Also, there's a class called key code combination, which checks for example, Control R or whatever it might be. So we can check exactly what key or keys are pressed at a specific time. And responding, again, just to show more explicitly what's happening. In the pre-Java 8, what happened was that we had set on key pressed, and that needed some kind of event handler. Event handler, which is an interface having just one method called handle, and whatever we decided to call this key event, which is what's coming in, we used in order to get a key code. For example, up, key code up. In Java 8, we have a shorthand, which means that E something, do something. And the important thing here is that E then is what's holding the variable, in this case, this one, holding which key is pressed. So E.getCode, key up, key code up, sorry, is the equivalent. This one is much faster to write. This is much more informative. But we do this. A little images with an X and Y layout, and we are going to see something similar to a animation, but we're not really there yet. So the important thing here is that we have a scene. So we look at the entire scene this time, not a specific control, but we can do that if we like. We can check for a specific component. what key is pressed when that component is in focus. But in this case, we look at the complete scene. Set on key pressed. If it's up, then change the Y layout of the TIE fighter in this case. If it's down, and you see, change accordingly. And what we get is with the right images, you can see TIE fighter there, and we press a key and ooh, it moves. Yeah, it really moves a lot smoother, of course. These are just two images. It would be easy to make it sound like as well, but I haven't done that. But that brings us to our last subject for today, namely animations. Because we want to make these movements in as smooth possible way as we can. Because reacting to events, as we saw previously with the mouse and the keyboard or whatever, it's really fun if that makes some sort of action on the screen as well. We are going to look at animation as a way of updating all the graphical elements. We are going to show sprites, or just graphics really, moving around on the screen in different ways. And as I said, we have hardware acceleration for doing this. And we can actually make everything move around. So I've seen numerous examples of people creating three-dimensional cubes with different MP4 movies playing on each side. And it works because everything is hardware accelerated. Fairly stupid, but it does work. We have a large number of classes in JavaFX to help us do this. We have the abstract classes animation and animation timer, which then again has a number of concrete classes which look something like this, where we see that all of these, they actually inherit from object directly and not from JavaFX namespaces. So we have animation, timeline, transitions, many different transitions. And we also have the animation timer and the keyframe key value. And we will look into a number of these. Down here in transition, we have a number of classes that help us make animations that are fairly simple, but we might need to do them again and again and again. And then we have a timeline, which makes it easy for us to make this old-style cartoon kind of animation. An animation timer, which is just a timer, but makes it possible for us to really calculate the frames per second that we get. But if we look into the animation class, we see that it has a number of methods, like auto reverse, cycle, count for the number of times an animation should be played, rate, status, start, stop and pause, and so on. And we'll begin to look into these animation classes by looking at the transition subclasses. So the idea behind transition is to change a state over time, and that can be it is done by an internal timeline that it calculates some sort of fade, rotate, or path, for example. Meaning that for fade, for example, we just set a start and an end for this, and it calculates the frames in between. And it works on anything, and I'll show you a example of the fade transition on an image. So it makes it possible to fade an image, and we go from 0.0, which is invisible, to 1.0, which is fully visible. We set a duration, which is the time that we want it to take. So if we say that we want this to take, well, 2 seconds, for example, it will calculate how much it needs to fade the image for it to be, for example, completely faded in that time. In this case, we will cycle it and reverse it when we get to the end. And the method play is used in most of these animations in order to start the animation itself. So, Kylo Ren over here will say, I will finish what you started. He will not actually say that. But you'll see an image of him. And we'll create a fade transition here called fade to black, which has a duration of 4,000 milliseconds on, in this case, just the image, or rather the image view, of course. But it could be on anything. Could be on a stage, could be on a layout, or whatever it might be. We go from 0.0 to 1.0, and we want to change it by 0.3. If we don't set it, it will calculate something. Set cycle count to animation indefinite. It will repeat indefinitely, and it will auto-reverse when it gets to the end. And then by just saying play, it will start the animation. And in this case, I've just tried to make screenshots of it, but at first you can't see it, and then it fades in, and it's really nicely shown, and then it goes back again. It's quite nice, actually. I've looked at it for a long time. I really like it. It gives a nice, you can't see this on the static animation, of course, but it does give a really smooth fade in and out of this image. Okay, so the next one is to rotate, which also might be something that we want to do a lot. And this one, apart from what we've seen previously, also has an angle change from the initial state, 360 for a complete circle. We also set the interpolation, which tells us where we want to make the rotation. Yeah, let's see the example. It takes an image. It has a rotate transition called snood. It does this for 3,000 milliseconds. It goes the complete circle indefinitely, auto-reverse, and interpolation ease both means that it will, instead of just going poof, 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 it will actually slow down slightly at the end and then speed up and slow down, making it look fairly easy on both sides. And then we play it. Okay, now hold on, because it's me. And this image will rotate me all the way around and then back again with a nice little bounce at the end. Yeah, let's go on. Both of the previous transitions have been fairly static in that they work a little exactly where they are. So they fade in or out and they rotate or whatever. However, there's also the path transition, which makes it possible for us to define a path with graphical primitives, like, for example, move to, line to, cubic curve to, and so on, to define a path on which a graphic should really run. And this is actually one of the first examples that I borrowed it from a book, and I've shown it year after year after year, because it's from the first book that was printed on JavaFX. And what we do is that we create a path transition, and for that to work we need a path, and a path merely defines, in this case we just move to somewhere and then we create a line from there to there, and then a new line and some cubic curve to somewhere and another one like this. So it defines a path, and this path is set to invisible and then given to this path transition. This path transition also has a duration, in this case 10 seconds. We set a path and we set what node, in this case an image view. Orientation. Orientation means how this image should orientate itself towards the path. And this one is orthogonal to the tangent, which is a fancy way of saying that when it comes to a curve it will go like that, and then it will go like that, something like that. So it will follow the curve nicely. And it will do this forever and go back, of course. And then play. And that will look, you can't really see the animation, I think it's just one, yeah. But what it does is it goes like this over the screen and then back again. And again, it does this in a really, really nice way, really smooth way, which is the idea of JavaFX. Those animations are really nice when you have something in an interface that you need to move around in exactly this way. But sometimes you want to move things from a specific X to specific X and Y and so on. And then we can use these translate transitions instead. And we'll move on from these to a timeline later on. But here will be a number of examples of how to move or translate something from one position to another one. In this example, we use an image, and we will change direction when we get to the end, or edge, I should say, of it. So we create an image view of a TIE fighter again. I really like those. And then a bouncing tire, blah, 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 blah. And here we have the translate transition for 2000 milliseconds on this TIE. What does it do? Well, it begins from an X position, which is the position where we put our X-wing. And it sets a 2x. So where will it go? Well, to the end of the screen. And it checks in this case it calculates so that when it moves in X direction, it should bounce with the image still inside, so it shouldn't bounce outside the image. And Y is static, so it will just move in a line indefinitely and reverse and interpolation here to linear, meaning that it will just bounce when it gets to the end. Yeah. So this is for going backwards and forwards, backwards and forwards. Not that much fun, but we can combine this with a few other things. For example, there are sequential and parallel transitions as well. And we will look at an example where we use this parallel transition in order to make two TIE fighters move at the same time, but different directions over the screen. Remember when you do that you create two translations, and then you add those to this parallel translation, which is the one that you play. So you don't do it for the individual, but you hand over all of it to this parallel transition. If you want things to happen after each other, you can do the same, but use sequential translation instead, and then it will move between the different translations that you add. So we create two images instead, TIE 1 and TIE 2. And then we create two translations. The first one is exactly the same. No, sorry. I moved them slightly, but it's more or less the same as before. We've just moved this one a little higher up and this one a little lower down. But they do exactly the same, but they start in different positions. We add those to the parallel transition like that, and we play the parallel transition. And the reason why I say that we notice this is that when copying and pasting, I of course had the play transition over there and play transition over there, and it all went bananas. So put them into the parallel transition. Yeah, as you can't see the animation, it doesn't matter that much, but it does it really smooth. Okay, but that's not enough. We want to make this even better, and we want to make use of a timeline. So the timeline is a way for us to say that an animation should consist of a number of frames. And this works more or less like old-style cartoons. So we define what should be done on a specific frame. A timeline defines the sequence of frames, and the keyframe defines what should be done in a specific frame. And for each update, action event, something can be updated. And that's exactly what we're going to do in this example. So what we do here is that we create, as previously, an image or an image view, put it somewhere, the stage, and then we have a keyframe, and it has a duration, and it updates something. In this case, it will, just as before, really just let well, in this case, we've changed both X and Y, so it will bounce around the window everywhere. And what it does is to update the X and Y for each keyframe, for each frame. So it checks, where is it? Are we close to the edge of the screen? Or are we going, well, what order are we going in? So it updates the position for each keyframe, and it puts the keyframe updates into this timeline, and it's the timeline that we're playing. So it will now go around different places in this window, just bouncing around. And just to add to this, to make it really fun, we want many ties bouncing towards each other as well. And to make this feasible and possible, we create ties from the image view class. So all the ties will inherit from that one. And for illustrative purposes, we will have an array of all the other ships inside that one. That's not really a good way of doing it. But we do that because what we want to do is to use this method called intersects, which checks if two objects are intersecting. So if we have sprite collision, and that's collision detection, and that's really, really nicely done. We have a class called TIE Fighter, and I'll show that in just a second. And we create an array list of these TIE Fighters, and we add TIE Fighters to this one with the different start positions. And we have a keyframe. The keyframe, what it does is, every 10 milliseconds, it goes through the array of TIE Fighters and calls the move method. It creates a timeline, and it cycles indefinitely. So what's happening here is that we call the move for every 10 milliseconds, basically, or it cycles through the different ties, different move methods. And the move method is available here. First off, it just puts this one is the TIE Fighter, which stands the image view, and it creates this array of TIE Fighters, or rather one TIE Fighter randomly positioned onto the image. And then it has this move method, which checks again the X and Y, and it adds with the speed of it an X and a Y position. And it checks the edges over here for the other for the edges of the window, and it updates the positioning and speed accordingly. But the interesting thing is down here in this for loop, which uses the intersects. The intersects takes a bound, so the layout bound of the other TIE fighter, and changes the direction based upon what way we are bouncing towards each others. But that's all that it does. So this intersect here is really nice for making this kind of collision detection. Now you can't see it, but what happens is that they to each other. So they bounce towards the edges and they bounce towards each other all the way. Of course, these are of course seen as rectangles like this. So they won't. They will bounce if they meet down here as well. But that's the limitation of intersects. Lastly, just very fast, if you want to go one way deeper, you're able to use the animation timer, which is set to at least 60 frames per second, and you use it. Well, this example isn't the best for showing this, but it does show that you create something that's going to fly, in this case a large TIE fighter, and it uses this animation timer, and again just sets the X and Y positions with set translate X, so it moves it. The idea here is that it does this at least 60 times per second, and it will you can hardly see it, but it's a really large TIE fighter, and it smoothly animates it forwards and backwards. So, with time to spare, we are at the end of this lecture, and even though we've handled loads of stuff, there's almost equally much stuff left. For example, I haven't told you how to change the looks of the controls, which is fairly basic, easy to do using a CSS-like style. There are loads more controls and so on. Today there's loads of stuff to read on the internet about this, so do that, and also check all the latest news on fxexperience.com. Any questions? You seem to be on your way? No. Okay. Thank you very much. Thank you.